Hi, I'm Marshall, and this is my 8.4 assignment about my client's fitness test results. So, the first test I got my client to do was the yo-yo test, and this is a test of aerobic fitness. My client scored 580 meters on this test, and if we compare this to normative data, we could say that this is a below average score. And due to this, I have some recommendations and ways of improvement for him. But first, let's look at some strengths and weaknesses of the test that make the test reliable or not reliable. You can see on the screen here that some of the factors that made the yo-yo test reliable include clothing. And what I mean by this is that the clothing my client was wearing was sports specific, and so he's correctly dressed in order to participate in the test. In addition to this, my client had done no exercise prior to the test, and so fatigue could not have affected his results in any way. A warm-up was also done, and so my client was ready to do the test. And finally, the accuracy of the results was very precise, as it was relatively simple to count how many lengths of the course he did. Weaknesses, however, do include the unclear protocol that my client was experiencing. The protocol on the CD was different to the protocol that we had researched together online, and so my client was confused when performing the test, and this below average score he got could be because of the misunderstanding. In order for my client to get a better score next time, my recommendations include doing some endurance training to try and increase his aerobic capacity. And this training should only be done maybe once or twice a week because he's inexperienced when it comes to this type of training. And this lack of experience, I suggest that the training should be light intensity but long periods. And doing this for maybe a month will see a dramatic increase in my client's aerobic capacity, and so therefore should result in a better score when he does the yo-yo test again. The next test was the 35-meter sprint, and we did this to test my client's speed. He got a time of 5.04 seconds, and when comparing this to the normative data relative to the test, it would be classed as a good score. Strengths of this test include that my client did the test on a surface that was a non-slip surface, and so this meant that there was no chance or a limited chance of him slipping over whilst performing. Also, the test was carried out during the middle of the day, and so tiredness would not have affected my client's results. And similarly to the last test, no previous exercise was done, and a warm-up was completed before the test was done. Unlike the last test, the protocol for the 35-meter sprint was done under a clear protocol, and so my client was very sure about how to do the test correctly. However, a weakness of the test could be that the accuracy of the scores was not very precise, and this is because there is no way I can be 100% sure that the stopwatch was started and stopped at the exact time he started and finished, and so therefore the scores that he got may not be perfectly accurate. Although my client's score was a good score when it compared to normative data, I still have some recommendations so that you can try and improve it even more. And these recommendations include doing some weight training. Doing some squats whilst holding a kettlebell or a dumbbell will improve the power in his legs, meaning that he'll be able to sprint quicker and get a better score. I would recommend that the training be done every other day so that there is time to rest between sessions, and these sessions should be short with a high intensity so that we can increase the power with as much as possible. The third test was the hand grip strength test, and this was testing my client's forearm strength. The score my client achieved was 60.06, which, when we look at the normative data, is classed as an excellent score. Strengths of the hand grip test included my client doing no exercise before completing the test, and so he did not feel fatigued whilst performing. He also did a warm-up beforehand, and so his muscles were ready to perform during the test. My client was wearing sport-specific clothing, however, I don't believe that the clothing he was wearing would have affected the results he got in any way. And finally, the accuracy of the test was extremely accurate because I didn't actually have to measure anything, because the dynamometer, which is the machine used, did it for me, and so I just had to read the score off of the screen. The only limitation or weakness to the test my client did was the time of day that he actually did it. He performed the test in the morning, and so him feeling tired could have affected the score he got. Although when we look at his results, I don't really think that he was feeling tired as he got such a good score. And once again, although the score my client got was excellent, there is always room for improvement, and so I have some recommendations for him to try and get a better score if he was to do the test again. I recommend doing some open hand weight training or resistance training with low repetitions and sets, but heavy weight, as this will give him the most chance to increase the forearm strength the most. But I would mainly suggest that my client concentrates on the technique he uses when doing the test, as I feel the grip is very important to get the best scores. The fourth test my client did was the sit and reach test, and this tested his flexibility. He scored 24 meters on the test, and when compared to normative data, is another excellent score. Strengths of this test included my client's clothing being sport specific, him doing a warm up before the test, and understanding a clear protocol, and also the accuracy of the results. Weaknesses, however, include the fact that the test is not a valid test when it comes to measuring a person's flexibility, as the test only measures lower back and hamstring flexibility rather than measuring whole body flexibility. Like the previous test, although my client's scores were excellent, I have some recommendations in order for him to try and improve the score even further. And my recommendation is that he does some yoga. Every day at low intensity will result in more flexibility for his body and muscles. And so it will mean that he'll be able to get an even better score when he reaches forward on the sit and reach test. The penultimate test my client did was the vertical jump test. And when performing in this test, he scored 41 centimeters, which, like most of the other tests, was classed as an excellent score when we compared it to the appropriate normative data. The factors that made this test reliable include the sport-specific clothing my client was wearing, and the fact that he did a warm-up beforehand to get his muscles ready. And finally, the fact that he had done no exercise prior to the test and so wasn't feeling fatigue. On the other hand, the accuracy of the results could be a factor that affects the reliability of the vertical jump test. And this is because there is no way of being 100% sure where the exact spot my client touched was, meaning that I could not be sure what the exact result was when he jumped up. And again, like the other tests, I have recommendations for my client so he can improve his results for next time. And I recommend doing, again, weight training similarly to the 35-meter sprint test, as this is going to help increase the strength and power in his legs, meaning that he'll be able to jump higher. And like the hand grip strength test, I also recommend that my client focuses on his technique. And this is because if he makes sure that he uses his arms and to the best that he can, it will help to drive him up when he jumps, and this could affect his score, making it better. The final test my client did was the press up test, and this is another test of his this is a test of his muscular strength and stamina. He scored 26 on this test, which, according to the relative normative data for the test, is average. The test was seen as mostly reliable because he was wearing sport-specific clothing, did a warm-up before doing the test, and he had done no previous exercise, meaning he wasn't fatigued. And lastly, he did the test at around midday, which means that he wasn't tired whilst performing. However, the only factor I feel that could have affected the reliability was the technique of the press-ups he was doing. And this is because everyone's definition of a proper press-up is different. And so we can't be sure whether he was doing proper press-ups or not. Because of his score on the test being average, I have recommended that my client does circuit training to try and improve his muscular strength and stamina. And I think circuit training would be the best because you can target specific muscle groups, which means that my client will be able to target his core and his arms, as they are the main muscle groups used when doing press-ups. Thanks for watching.